Welcome back. Welcome back. Trevor Snyder. We are getting schooled on climate change. And in this episode, what we're doing is there's a clip on Fox News over here. And there it is. And this is probably more an opinion piece, but they do have experts. And I'd be interested to listen to what this guy is saying, and then maybe Google his name and research him. But obviously this is Fox News a couple months ago, and there is no climate crisis, Tom Harris. So let's listen to what he has to say.
The most maddening part of all of that, though, is that these policies, they're not just destroying lives. They're rooted in lies, all of them. Our next guest was once a climate alarmist, but now says the entire movement is, quote, a scam. Tom Harris is the executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition. He joins me now. Tom, good to see you tonight. Now, you actually say the only way to get rid of this is to go after the science of climate change. Explain.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people will say, well, Canada, for example, puts out so little greenhouse gas emissions that we shouldn't actually try to reduce it because China is double the United States. Well, the trouble is people argue that, well, yes, but we have to set an example to the world and we have to be good citizens and all that sort of thing. So they're using these arguments quite often that China's doubled the emissions of the U.S., et cetera. But the real underlying thing is that there is no climate crisis. I was originally an aerospace engineer, and I would give speeches and I wrote articles. I wrote one in the Ottawa Citizen about comparative planetology, how studying the planets helps us understand the Earth better. And I used the example of the runaway greenhouse effect on Venus. I said, this could happen on the Earth if we don't reduce carbon dioxide.
I think there's somebody that said that that happened with Mars, actually, and that Mars will be coming back, and could have a very fertile environment. And I think it'd have to be maybe reintroduced, but maybe it's already there. I don't know. Anyways, I digress. But obviously this guy is just straight up, there's just no crisis. The Earth's he's probably thinking, yeah, the Earth is changing to some degree. It always does, cycles, whatever, but let's listen.
Well, a local professor at Carleton University, professor of geology, he liked my article so much he used it in his course on climate change. But he said to the students, but that part about Venus is wrong. What happened on Venus cannot physically happen on the Earth, and he explained why. Now, I thought, who is this climate change denier? Well, he invited me into his lab, and he showed me the geologic history that he and others are finding, and they found no consistent correlation between carbon dioxide and Earth's temperature. At times, CO2 was 1,300% of today, and we were stuck in very cold conditions. So it was all over the board. So I started wondering, well, maybe he's right. He exposed me to a lot of people who actually showed me that there are thousands of scientists. And here's a book actually that illustrates that. It's called Climate Change Reconsidered, and this is on climatechangereconsidered.org. There are thousands of references here which talk about the fact that there is no foundation to the climate scare. It's all based on models that don't work.
But Tom, when you hear...
Before Laura Ingraham goes in there, and here's the thing, on this show, Laura Ingraham is obviously a very she's biased. I like her. I think she's funny, but biased one way and whatnot. It's just whether this guy really believes this. So he was saying, he used to be, all about climate change, and then he had some geologists actually change his mind. And actually, I have similarly, and even what most people say when they talk about different times, like even when the dinosaurs were around, there was so much more CO2, and it allowed things to get larger, but it wasn't necessarily that much warmer. But it was actually more, I think, warmer during periods of times. Regardless, does CO2 and putting solar panels, what if we have all that reflective material and it doesn't get soaked up into the earth, or I don't know, do what it's supposed to do? I don't know. That always bothered me too, is how we're just naturally just shooting it back. So I think there's a lot of things to consider that people they just want to look at things in a vacuum, and I wish that were the case, but there's a lot of variables, and that's my issue with the climate change argument. Let's move on.
You know, politicos especially, but not just the politicos, celebrities. It's settled science. Science is settled. Is science ever settled, really? I mean, except over time where you really, you know, what is H2O?
I have this argument with people all the time. And look, yes, I do have my degree, my bachelor's degree in biology. It's do I know everything? Absolutely not. I took a lot of epidemiology. It's actually in health science is my degree. But I have this argument with people because, like, the very first thing in most science classes is they tell you that it is the pursuit of knowledge, of fact, but you never really obtain it, because something will always, like, every time they prove something, it only works, well, actually it works this way, but also this way. So they're always adding to it and changing it and finding more stuff, and science is never concrete. And that's where people get stuck in their ways, is they're like, no, this is what they've proven. And it's like, okay, but what's the next guy gonna prove? You know what I mean? Is it gonna be in contrary? Is it gonna be in sync? Is it gonna be something different where it branches? I don't know. You know, that's the thing. I do listen. I'm going to listen, but I find that climate change is big business. That's it.
Well, we know what H2O is, right? We understand that. But
Yeah.
Is this science settled really quickly?
No, in fact, it's a very immature science. In fact, we don't even know whether it's going to warm or cool in the future.
Correct.
Various people who study the sun, for example, Dr. Patterson,
we think it's going to cool,
that
actually.
We're headed into a grand solar minimum around 2060, and that we'll see gradual cooling over the next few decades. So the bottom line is we have no clue what's going to really happen. So the only sensible approach is to get ready for it, to make our infrastructure hardened, to use solid, dependable sources of energy like coal. This is a piece of coal from eastern Kentucky. And not to turn off our solid, reliable energy sources for flimsy wind and solar power. You know, you'd laugh. It's appropriate that I'm based here in Ottawa, because right now here in Ottawa, Canada, they're running a municipal election. And it is the most corrupt election I have ever seen. God. They are trying their best to bring in a climate alarmist as mayor. So guess who they put in charge of the 4 debates they've had?
See, that is part of the problem, is it gets politicized way too much, versus what I would consider the alarmist level. And I do believe that, if anything, we'd be getting into probably a cooler phase sometime in the near future for a while or whatever. And what people say is, as the oceans and bodies of water heat up and more water ends up in the atmosphere and whatnot, is going to come down. When it comes down on those colder regions, which eventually the winds will push that way because everything goes from high to low pressure, it creates those new polar forms. And then so you have these times where it's just melting, and then it's freezing, and it's getting pulled in those directions, and it's gonna get colder. So where we are in that cycle for either of those, I don't know. But my estimate is that I don't think we really have to worry about it too much. I think, and I hate to say this because I'm going to get blasted, I think this type of problem is going to solve itself. And if we notice something different, we are exceptionally adaptable. And I do think that what he's saying, like the CO2, there's been times where it's been 1,200% more in the air, and it was some of the most flourished times in the existence of the earth, based on what they say, right? Okay, let's move on.
Climate activists. They have climate activists running the mayor's debate.
Pardon me.
Professor, it doesn't surprise me that this is happening in Canada, it's happening in the United States, and we need real facts to discern what the real truth is here. Professor, thank you for this invaluable work that you're doing.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube.
Yeah. So, I mean, I personally think that that this guy's not far off. I think that, look, I don't know what the CO2 does. I do know raising it, we are that when you burn stuff, that's what happens. But I personally think that we could actually, that it wouldn't even matter that much. I mean, you know how the Mayans got everything so fruitful in their area? You know, they look at the jungle now and what that encompasses, the Amazon. And I mean, that was like the gardens. That was manicured and everything, and it's had overgrowth since the Mayans have gone, and quickly overgrowth quickly, and now we're going back and we're taking stuff over and whatnot. But a lot of those mounds and stuff were temples and hills, and I mean, they've looked at those sites and found a lot of them and looked that stuff up. So I think that we need to continue to like burn some of the fields. Like, they produced some of the most fertile soil down there, the Mayans, and made everything crazy fertile. And a lot of it had to do with controlled burning, because that is what the Earth does naturally with volcanoes and lightning strikes and everything. That's what happens. So that's my take. Long-winded on this one. Hey, if you feel you want to continue to follow me, to debate me, to just see where I end up in the next few videos, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you don't like it, dislike it, call me an idiot in the comments, whatever. I appreciate listening to everybody, and I hope you appreciate listening to me. We'll catch you on the next video.